When you guys played Georgia here 2 years ago, did you know at the time, like, what, I guess, a piece of compelling evidence that was going to be for how much the program had turned around? You guys are 23-3 since.
Well, I mean, I don't know that we're thinking about anything but, putting our football team in a position to be successful for that, that season. And, it was early in the year. We were certainly feeling as though we had done the things necessary to get our program back to where it needed to be. But we weren't thinking to the future about anything else but, taking it, one week at a time and all the little things necessary for us to get back to the pride and tradition of Notre Dame football. So again, looking into where it's taken us, is where certainly I'm sure if we were to take the moment to think about it, that's where we would want it to be. But at that moment, we were just thinking about, that week, that game, and that's about it.
Thanks.
Well, we've got a battle all over the country, whether it's against Georgia or USC on the West Coast or Penn State and Pittsburgh, down in Florida against Miami or Florida. It's just the nature of it that we have to go into geographical areas and take the very best players against, the top programs in that area. And, we have to be able to talk about our distinctions. And, there's a lot of battles that we don't win, but we do win some of them, and we're fortunate to win this one. Yeah, I think the quarterback position's a little different. Obviously, with Brandon Wimbush, we had much more of a running quarterback, though, he certainly played well that night. I think you're looking at an offense that has a little bit more diversity in terms of what it can do with the tight end position and wide receivers. I just think a little bit more diversity from an offensive standpoint. Some similarities on the offensive line. We have some really good offensive linemen, but I think we've got some good offensive linemen this year. But I'd probably say the style is similar. Quarterback is a little bit different, and a little bit more diversity in terms of playmakers.
And then just to follow up, Notre Dame's a lot of teams' big games. You've got a lot of rivals all over the country. Can you just talk about how your players grow accustomed to that sort of spotlight, maybe that sort of, I don't know if pressure is the right word, but that level of attention?
Yeah, it's a lot of reasons why they want to come to Notre Dame. It's like being on Broadway. It's a Broadway show. You're on stage every game you play. It's on national TV. They know that all their games are broadcast either on NBC or CBS or ESPN or ABC. So they know they're in that spotlight, and they choose to come to Notre Dame because they want that. They relish that opportunity. So obviously in this game, being on national television, it's why they come to Notre Dame, and they really enjoy it. So they don't see it as pressure; they see it as a privilege, and they enjoy it.
Thank you.
Hey Brian, what do you remember about Jake Fromm a couple of years ago? That was his first career start and having to make it in South Bend.
I thought he played with great poise. I thought he was extremely efficient. He took care of the football. I think all the things that, you get a glimpse at somebody when they're a freshman and when they exhibit those kind of traits, you're going to have somebody that's going to be a special player. And so it's obviously, put it in that sense, he's come along to being that kind of special player. So I kind of got a glimpse of that the first night we saw him, when he played with such poise, such confidence. He wasn't afraid of the moment. He stepped up big. So it doesn't surprise me
at your career, I mean, you got Notre Dame to a national championship game. I guess it was that third season, but then it seemed like there were some up and down years that followed. When you look at these last 2 or 3 years, what have you kind of done to kind of help stabilize this program to keep it where it is on a more consistent basis?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think continuity with staff, I think, is important. I think in the recruiting process it is absolutely been something that we've been able to rely on. And I think just, you know, for me, more than anything else, is being consistent on a day-to-day basis with what our mission is, and that is to graduate our players and to play for a national championship. And so our guys know exactly what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, and I think that's really led to the consistency of the program over the past 4 years.
Okay. And I would imagine when there's big scheduling series come up, there's different degrees of conversations you have with Jack Swarbrick. What were the ones like when there was this decision to schedule Georgia? What was important to you about having a team like this on your schedule?
We were looking for an SEC opponent, one that you know, we felt like you know, shared some you know, at least some commonality. You know, we liked the fact that we were going to be you know, in that area in the state of Georgia recruiting. So we liked that piece of it. You know, again, you know, we have a lot of alumni in that area, so I think that was a draw for us as well. So it's not only the school itself, but there's some geographical concerns that we look at in terms of putting the schedule together as well. And I think that's what made this an easy decision for us.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You sense there's an extra bounce in the steps this today.
Oh yeah, certainly. You know, when you have Georgia, the number 3 ranked team in the country, you know, I think it's national television, it's game day, all the eyes are on you. That's why you play these games. So the guys are pretty excited about it.
Hey, Brian, how do you evaluate the run defense after 2 games? You mentioned big play runs. So what's behind that, and how do you feel about the matchup with Georgia in that regard?
Well, you know, there were 2 runs that we just didn't like the overall team defensive support. You know, it just wasn't one guy. You know, we gave up 2 big runs. Against Louisville, it was just poor execution and some option things in zone read. We cleaned that up. I think our guys did a much better job of executing the plan. I think what we were disappointed with was that just some poor defensive structure where the ball got outside the defense. That can't happen against anybody. Can't happen. So, you know, there's a lot of similarities structurally. You know, big players at the running back position. So, you know, a lot of similarities. Probably a little bit bigger physically on defense. I thought they weren't quite the same size. They were extremely athletic a couple of years ago, and they're just a little bit bigger up front this year. But just an outstanding football team in all areas.
You mentioned the size on the offensive line. Is that what kind of grabbed your attention the most when you look at Georgia's line of scrimmage?
Yeah, I'd say so. But both sides, and the defensive line is a bigger defensive line that they've had than the one that we played a few years ago. So certainly the offensive line and the defensive line, those are the 2 things that are a little bit different from what we saw a couple years ago.
Thanks, Coach.